Okay, we are recording. Let me get my ready speaker voice on. Today is Saturday. It is the 12th, and Amber's in Utah. I'm in Connecticut. We are just jamming out. We had a great conversation just before, and we are feeling extra loopy today. But today's conversation I'm really excited about. So for everybody who is just chiming in and joining these conversations, I'm Joanna Rosenthal. I'm a holistic lifestyle coach. I help women raise their vibration to discover their soul's purpose through healing their physical vessel. And this is Amber.
You always have such a good intro, and every time I think like, oh, I need to come up with one, and then I never do. I'm Amber. I'm a psychic medium and Reiki master. That's it.
But she's a really freaking good one. I've used her before, and she's awesome. So y'all better check her out if you want a good reading and Reiki, okay? So today's conversation, we're very loopy, but I also feel like this has to do with like the mood that is Mars retrograde, and also we're entering the end of like the last third of the year, and the last third of the year is just like astrologically very like blah, blah, blah. So we're exemplifying it for you guys in person form, so you're welcome. Today's conversation is definitely a different one to have. We felt that after the last call that we did with each other about water, that this was a really important conversation to have, just given the current circumstances and a lot of the cultural misconceptions, if you will, about this topic, that basically incites and insinuates a lot of fear within us about death and what it means when you do die. But before that, we experience death in many different ways, almost daily, and we want to get into that a little bit more. So, Amber, do you want to like talk a little bit more about what we mean with like every day you experience death?
Yeah. So there are whoa. Death is actually breaking past the illusion that we are stuck in this world. Death is becoming who we are as a soul thing, which is actually life. Death is also, it's a cycle. It's like new beginnings, I like to think of death more so as a new beginning instead of like the ending of something. Death is always integrated with a new way of being and like finding ourselves. It's not something that is heavy. It's breaking through an illusion, essentially.
Yeah, and from what I understand too with that, like in terms of even, using tarot cards, right? When you're looking at the Tower card and you're looking at the Death card, you see that both of those signify that you have to break something down in order to allow for and make room for something new in your life, because as humans, we can only have the capacity to carry and take on so much. Eventually, when we grow and we learn and we take on new things, we have to let go of something else. And so that's what I'm understanding too, is what you're saying. Right?
Yeah. And I feel like instead of it being like this separation, instead of death meaning like I'm letting go of this, I'm separating from this, I am no longer here, it's actually I am now here. I now have this experience. I no longer have that baggage. There's like a different side to it that I feel like we don't honor. I feel like we're stuck in like the like, oh my gosh, like things are going crazy, everything's going to end, like, but it's actually not that. It's a beautiful thing. It's not anything negative, and it's nothing we have to fear. Again, death is just breaking through an illusion of some sort, and while that can be scary, it's honestly, it's like being in a tunnel, and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel is death. It's a rebirth. It's a reawakening. Being in the tunnel is what's scary, and that's life. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's opposite.
So Okay, so because you help souls and people cross over, right? So
Uh-huh.
we're gonna get into that a little bit more too. But in terms of in terms of coaching and how I got to where I was, for example, I had to especially experience a lot of perceptions and recognizing that
Yeah.
these perceptions were illusions in my life.
Yeah.
And I was holding on to this concept of comfort. And this concept of comfort is in and of itself an illusion. And
Yeah.
and how do you navigate dealing with these illusions? Because illusions are associated with ego, and ego can have its benefit, right? Because ego is comfort. It is it gives you like a routine. It helps you ground yourself in a lot of ways where your soul kind of just wants to take flight and be like, I'm living my best life all the time, right? But like, we are human and we have to experience the human experience. And so when you recognize that there is this added layer of being like, how do I balance this like soul and ego? You have to let go of these inner dialogue conversations essentially that you have with yourself that hold you back from experiencing new. Because let's be very real, a lot of people that I've worked with are so sick of where they are, but they're scared to move on to something unknown, and that requires releasing a pattern and letting it go to heal that and to move into life. So in terms of like with your work, when did you have your aha moment that like you have to experience death in many different forms to get this new? Like, what was your click?
I feel like because I have been doing this since I was a little kid, I feel like it was kind of something that's always been there. Additionally, and I think we talked about this already, I'm not sure. When my dad was 7, he had a stroke. He was in a coma for I think a month or something like that. He wasn't supposed to make it through. And he has a full recollection of passing on and like renegotiating his contract to come back. So that was something that he was always very open about. Additionally, his older sister passed away in a car accident. And she was young. She was only 18. So my dad, I don't know the age difference. He may have been like 16 or something like that. So obviously that makes a profound impact even on my grandparents, losing a child. So I feel like death is something that we commonly discuss, which I feel like a lot of families don't. And I feel like it's so important to discuss it. But because of that, and because of my sensitivities to energy, I would see her. I would see when my great grandma passed away, I would always feel her every night, like sit on my bed. And I understood that death is not an end. It is the beginning of a new way of life, essentially. It's not the end all. It's a shift of just consciousness. And I feel like even if that's applied to, like, if somebody's atheist, for example, and I don't know, whatever the religion is, and they don't necessarily believe in an afterlife or whatever. I feel like it's just even thinking about like organic material is constantly, like reused essentially, so after you pass on, you still become part of a bigger whole, and your body and your whatever is decomposed to help like nourish soil or whatever it is, like regardless, there's always some kind of new beginning for you, whether you believe it energetically or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just how the cycle is,
There's so many different things that I want to talk about because I feel like for people who want to listen in, they have to understand too that we are actual souls, light sources in a physical body, and we've tapped into this a few times in the past. But just to reiterate, we are when you break down our bodies, we are made up of a billions of cells, right? And our cells are made up of protons, electrons, neutrons. They're vibrations, and vibrations come together to make up the illusion that is us. But intertwined is this light frequency, and this light frequency makes up our soul. And our soul, it's been shown in science that like the minute that you pass, suddenly your weight drops by, I don't know how much, but it's like your weight suddenly drops by like 7 pounds or something. I think it would depend on the person, but it happens so quickly because suddenly your soul is moving on. What, in terms of the contract and how we ultimately as souls choose our experience, and even the person, and we pick our parents, can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about what you were talking about, how when we pass on, so each chakra is related to an energy body in our aura, an auric energy body, and those are grouped into 3 different planes. So the physical plane consists of the lower 3 chakras. So when somebody passes away and their life force energy essentially leaves, they become very like pale and almost opalescent. Their skin has like this weird color to it, and that is a removal of those physical plane energy, whatever, releasing. That being said too, and this is kind of correlating into Reiki, but Reiki is focusing on keeping your life force energy flowing to all parts of your bodies and all that stuff. When we think negatively, when we hold on to something negative, when we, I don't know, whatever it is, when we get something latched onto us, it creates a block in our energy field, and that can manifest in our organs becoming sick. We're blocking our life force energy, and that's why it's so important to remain centered and to have some kind of, I don't know, way of releasing, whether it be dancing or reading or meditating or whatever, and just keeping your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual planes all kind of lined up in order to truly stay centered in who we are and what our potential is, and like, our true essence. We need to allow our life force energy to be flowing. What did you say?
So I wanted to talk about how we as souls pick our human experience and our parents and all of that.
The process of reincarnation is, I feel like there's a lot of books about it, especially like hypnotherapists or whatever, will like talk about it a lot, where basically you meet with your spirit guides and you figure out your life plan basically, and like the goals and stuff, and they're so unique that you're also fulfilling like a whole worldly goal as well, and then you like slowly draw into the egg in the womb, and then you like slowly start gaining consciousness. There's like a burst of consciousness, and then you're born, and then it just kind of fades, and then you slowly like reawaken again. I actually, about a month ago, was meditating, and I remembered coming to Earth, basically. And I want to share that. It was a little bit different. Well, it kind of followed those same guidelines, but there was kind of new stuff too that I just wanted to share because it was a really interesting experience. So Earth is very unique, the earthly matrix or whatever, it's like a unique little bubble. We have a very unique way of being in comparison to other planets in the solar system.
I was gonna ask what this might be for another kind of conversation, but I do know that in terms of the universe, or even again the omniverse, right? Because it's so vast, that there are similar planets to Earth, right? In terms of the way of being, but from what I've also gathered too through meditation and through kind of recognizing, is that we are a combination of all of these different realities on this planet. Like we are the children of the universe, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting too is typically beings on other planets are often very much aware of who they are, who their potential is. They're very much connected to kind of, and they're also not always physical, so they're very connected to like that state of like being one and source and all that stuff. Granted, not like fully, like they still have their own lives and their own whatever, and they could be weird and have their weird mannerisms. However, with us, we have a lot of us, before we really like reach enlightenment or whatever, we don't have that. We're just here and nothing else exists, there are no other beings. Like we're just, you know, and we're just in this weird like bubble of like I don't know. We forget our nature. We forget a lot of stuff. We're here to essentially remember, you know? Yes. So that being said, a lot of beings from different planets will reincarnate on Earth. So we're like a mishmash of a lot of different stuff going on. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine because I realized that in our first life, just before we entered Earth, we were on this weird, like, it feels like Star Trek or something. We were like on some kind of like little mission. I don't know. But I was this like alien girl, and we were flying through the solar system, and we reached Earth, and it looked like this weird vortex of like light, though not like a black hole where it's like black, you know, it was like this light like cone, and it was bright light. And you know, we were aware what it was, and we decided, it was almost like we took one for the team and decided to come onto Earth and do whatever we had to do. So we entered the vortex. It was like obviously a big moment because it was a big decision. And we just kind of slowly entered it. And immediately upon entering it, I had this, like, it's almost like your life flashes before your eyes kind of thing, but I hadn't had a life on Earth. So it was like the life that I'm about to have kind of flashed in front of me, which was really interesting. Things kind of felt chaotic. I didn't know where I was. I felt kind of like lost and confused. And then I felt this drag. And it was just something was like dragging me very slowly. I felt like I was in a white room. It was kind of freaky, and I was just a little bit anxious. And then things went black, and I felt very calm and very at peace. And I was just kind of being, and then I felt the pull again. And I realized that, so this time it was a little bit faster because I was a little bit more willing, and I entered into the womb, and it was this overwhelming feeling of just love and like, just like pure motherhood. And just like, you know, it was so nice, and it was so overwhelming. So I kind of had that recognition that I was there, and then I was just kind of being again. I don't know. It's almost like if this is our physical world and this is the curtain and this is the energy world, you know, it was like there was a little connection there, but I was still very much in the energy world. I wasn't very present yet. Mm-hmm. And then essentially I was born. Things were very bright, obviously, you know, you're like entering into this new thing. But I still wasn't that present. I was still very much in the energy world. And it was like slowly over time, like piece by piece, almost started downloading into the physical. And then, yeah. So what I thought was interesting, because reading about reincarnation, or, you know, before we start a life and stuff like that, I always think like there are these people at a table and you're having a conversation and you're like, this is what I'm going to accomplish. This is what I need to do. I don't know. You know, it's like, I feel like there's this weird conversation. But the way that I had experienced it was almost like that flash of life before my eyes was almost like planning it out. I think because time isn't linear in the way that we think, you know, things don't have to happen where we sit down and have a discussion. It's almost like a soul agreement that happens immediately, you know, so it's like a snap. All right, this is what's going to happen. Boom, done, you know? Which I thought was really interesting. I also feel like because time isn't linear, entering the vortex does not require you to kind of have this grand introduction. It's like you become present and you're already in your circle of like all your lives happening. You know what I'm saying?
So you kind of had this really revolutionary experience just within the past month. That's so wild to me. Do you feel like when you're making the agreement, even if it is in a flash, like that's when you're like, okay, I know what my purpose is and where the blueprint is going to pan out. But what about when you're picking your family? Does that all happen at the same time? Is it all in that one?
I think so. I think because our personal missions are so unique, I honestly feel like things are already planned out. you know? I always had this like artistic, like, oh, there's a conversation. And then you like see all these faces and you're like, I want to be with them or something, you know? Like I always thought it was this like a grand, like whatever. But just with the way that energy is and like how everything's intertwined, I feel like there's just this beautiful, like harmonious balance where as long as we align to it, it's like we allow our soul to align where it needs to. New souls into the earth, if they're fresh and haven't had that many lifetimes or whatever, you know, it can be chaotic. So that's why spirit guides are really important, just to kind of like be there for support, because even feeling that like pull into the earthly matrix was really freaky, man. It was scary. It's like I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going to happen. I felt like I was just in this like white room that like went on forever and I was by myself, and like it's really scary, you know? So I feel like that reassurance and that support is really important. However, I feel like the way that it plans out is told and expressed in this beautiful manner just because that's how we can understand it. Because I feel like saying like, oh, it happens in a flash, this is what's going to happen done, I feel like is kind of confusing, especially because we do have free will and we do have the ability to change our pathways, you know? But I feel like it's just the consciousness in that state and that way of living is vastly different than being in this physical plane.
So now you come down, you're laying out what your purpose is, and when you come down, you forget that there's much more to life than what meets the eye, right?
Yeah.
I find that most of humanity starts to question it eventually at one point or the other, like, what is my purpose here? Like, why does this even exist? Like why are animals around? Like, where, like, and then you start feeling very confused, but then you do your research, and it unfolds in either an intuitive way. All of it is intuitive, but either physically intuitive or energetically intuitive. But in terms of the blueprint, what I've understood from it is that it doesn't matter how you get to certain points in your life, but there are major beats that are intended to wake you up and drive you to where your soul purpose is. And that could be something as like life shattering as somebody else dying, or you going through an eating disorder, or you experiencing a world catastrophe or a land catastrophe, and you being on the periphery of it, whatever it is, or you getting amputated, whatever it is, something there is intended to bring you to your higher self, to release something that you're holding on to because it is holding you back from sharing more love and love, and whether that be like loving yourself or loving others. So in terms of the blueprint, can you explain more about those like big beats?
Yeah, so that's essentially soul contracts. We are, again, here with a unique mission that's also fulfilling a unique worldly mission. So there are certain things that need to be planned out, essentially. We are manifestations of source energy. Source wants to experience everything, so everything is basically just being played out by these like our little beads of bodies, you know? That being said, we do have free will, so we can change that. For example, my dad was supposed to die when he was 7, but he was able to renegotiate the contract and come back. Now, renegotiation kind of changes a lot of things. I feel like source in the universe is very fluid. There is this beautiful balance, but that doesn't mean that it's stationary. There's a balance, but it's like within this fluidity. So should something happen that you do renegotiate your contract, I almost feel like you're reincarnating just in that moment. It's like it's a new lifetime in our view, within the same timeline. And I feel like that happens more often than I feel like we think. I feel like opportunities for reincarnation do happen during our lifetime. We don't necessarily yes, we are in one vessel, but there's a lot of soul exchange happening while we are within that one vessel.
So can you explain that, what you mean by a lot of soul exchange within that one vessel?
So I mean, as you are going throughout your life, you meet a lot of people, you have a lot of energy exchanges and it's like there's a constant interaction going on. That being said too, because we are source and because time is not linear and all this stuff, your essence will always remain, but the details or the character or whatever behind that essence will change. Throughout our lifetimes, we always keep our essence. Our essence does not go anywhere. It's just our story or our way of doing things is what is edited. I've experienced this personally, and I don't know if other people have gone through this, but there have been, I would say, probably about 5 times in my lifetime where I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this like new soul to take over almost, you know, where there's this like weird exchange and download where this big aspect of me like moves over, and then like this different form or whatever kind of comes in and is like birthed, but without being born, or you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that happens a lot, and I feel like that is almost to what's going on anytime we go through a big shift. You know, if we reach a soul contract, you know, sometimes there are aspects of that person that we are that need to go. They need to go, and we need to start developing like new character habits or traits or whatever, you know. And when that happens, I mean, our soul is there's so much to it, you know, that I feel like it's almost like this new energy of our true essence that we have kind of pushed away for so long is able to kind of come through and make a stand. Also too, because time is not linear, our past and future lifetimes are currently happening right now. They all affect each other. And I have found that sometimes, like, I don't know, it's almost like you can even have like a weird soul switch with like a lifetime happening like 100 years from now. You know, you might like switch places all of a sudden. You know, I feel like that happens more than we really realize. As you go through your life and start becoming centered with your mission and who you are and stuff like that, I feel like you get more freedom and more flexibility to kind of start integrating all of these lost parts of your soul, you know, that just due to being on earth and just with how things are, you know, we push things away for whatever reason, you know, so it's almost like developing and integrating old forgotten aspects of ourselves.
And when you do these soul exchanges, please correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm understanding too is that like that happens to either guide you to where you need to be in terms of your soul contract, or it will become more of a part of you when you are following your soul. When you're following
exactly.
soul. Okay, got it. So there are like those two main camps. I imagine there's some gray area too where things just happen and kind of in between, but that's the main two to focus on. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, and also, I mean, that doesn't necessarily happen with everybody. That's not necessarily like, oh, in one lifetime, you'll have like 5 weird soul transfers or something. You know, I don't feel like it's kind of dependent upon your path. Some people, if this is like their whole soul being, you know, they're only supposed to be like utilizing this little portion of stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like they may still are supposed to be centered and then just kind of like remembering little parts just kind of here, whereas other people are supposed to be integrating like the whole all around, you know. So for there it'd be more of a dramatic transformation where it's like literally you are almost starting like a whole new lifetime. A whole new lifetime, you know.
That's so fascinating to me. So then in terms of the concept of free will overriding what our souls are meant to do, what does that look like? Like, are there a lot of varieties, or are there a few varieties?
That I feel like is very individual. I feel like my dad's is more severe, where he, you know, he had his stroke, he went into the light, he, you know, was met by family, he felt so loved, it was like overpowering, he didn't want to leave, and then he realized like, wait, I'm really young, I still have stuff I want to do on earth, I'm not ready to release this lifetime. And he remembers literally having an exchange with, I think it was, I could totally be getting this incorrect, but I think it was like the sun, or I don't know, there was something that he was literally like debating with, you know, explaining like, no, this is what I want, and I'm not done here, like I need to go back. And it's like, no, it's time to pass on, like your contract essentially is over, like this is it, you know. And it's like, no, I need to come back. So for him it was like an actual debate with some kind of body. Obviously, if we're in the physical, we're not necessarily going to have like these debates that strongly, you know, with whatever. I have my own methods of, I feel like it's just basically setting an intention, or it's almost like the best thing I can think of is, do you know the movie Halloween Town?
Yes. So good.
Okay. So when, what's her name? Aggie is teaching Marnie how to like cast a spell, and she's basically saying like, you have to say it and then let yourself have it. You know, so I feel like that kind of goes to in changing contracts, where it's like you set an intention that this is not what you want, and you allow yourself to then shift that direction. When it is more major soul contracts, it does take a lot of effort and does take a lot of work and does take a lot of like, I'm going to do this, God damn it, you know, instead of just saying like, oh, I don't want this path anymore. You know, it's like, it's a big deal. You're renegotiating things. You're completely changing the form of the way that the like universe is working, you know, so it's a big kind of, it's a big deal. However, if we feel that strongly about it, you know, then that new path will kind of open to us, while the other one that we are rejecting will close.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. There were so many things that just kind of came to mind in my life. Even I was like, oh, noted. I'm going to make sure that I don't override too much, but also like make sure that I maintain, you know, what is serving me in the moment and what isn't. Because also from what I understand too, like you can override certain things by just saying I don't want this in my life. No, thank you. But if it's really intended in your soul contract, like it's going to come back, and it might come back in a way that you really didn't want, you know, or hypothetically, I mean, it might come back very smoothly, but like it's going to inevitably show up if it's meant to.
I feel like it's so dependent upon what that contract is. It could be something as like little as like, I'm supposed to step in dog poo and like track it inside for whatever reason, you know, but if you really don't want that, it's like all of a sudden you're like, wait, nope, I'm not going to walk there. You know, it could be something really subtle, but I feel like if that lesson is supposed to be learned, it'll be learned, like you said, in some other method. But if it's something bigger that's supposed to be more of like this like life transformational thing, you know, it does take a really intense reprogramming of the psyche, because you're then realigning with a new purpose and a new unique, I don't know, lesson or whatever, you know, that's supposed to be panned out.
So to for anybody who's listening, what we're talking about too is experiencing again death and rebirth of your day-to-day life, essentially. And in terms of when you've helped people or beings cross over, can we talk about some of those experiences? Let's talk about generally, you were saying that when you came to Earth and you had this realization this past month, it was kind of like the reverse effect. Can we talk about what it looks like generally for most souls if they're able to like fluidly leave?
To when they die? Okay. Yeah. So again, the physical plane of your orc bodies will leave through the crown of your head. Your life force energy leaves your physical vessel. As that happens, you have this flash of your life, just almost as like a summarization, just to be like, okay, these are all the lessons I did. Got it. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, correct. Done. Like a re-download of all the information that you took during your lifetime. You're met by your guides, any deceased family, old friends from past lives, whatever, you know, you're met by whoever you're met by. We just see the light, you know how people always talk about that, and we're reconnecting with our true nature, you know, so we feel that like overwhelming sense of love and just like warmth and light, and just like it's such a beautiful feeling, and it's just like there's nothing like it, you know, so you'll experience that. Typically there is a adjustment period almost. So after you kind of go through that, you'll feel your soul kind of drag. And I feel like, I don't know, it's like, I almost feel like it's just a time to just reflect on everything and understand where you are and all that stuff. At that point, a lot of people will start feeling like if they just had a family member pass away, you know, and it's like, oh, they passed away like a few days ago, and like all of a sudden I'm hearing knocking, or I'm like hearing my voice being called, or like weird things are happening, you know, it's usually that time that they're kind of processing everything and getting ready to kind of release, and then their soul continues to drag, and then they kind of stay in that state of like where everything's kind of dark and you're just kind of being. And I feel like you just kind of stay there being, you know, until it's time again to go through the process of like new lifetime, new lessons, whatever. Sometimes people who have died traumatically, whether it be murder or they died very young and can't make peace with what happened, will stay in that kind of limbo state where they're trying to interact with people around them. And that's what we think of as ghosts. They're essentially stuck. They're not able to pass on fully. And they're basically stuck in the in-between on our earth plane. They are confused. They don't know what to do. Everything feels anxious. These are all heavy energies. So they're not able to align with their true way of being, which is keeping them kind of half in this plane, because our earthly plane is heavy. You know, it's physical, so it's a heavy energy. Whereas obviously passing on is like very light, you know, it's a very light whatever. So those heavy energetic emotions will kind of, it's like a buoy or something, you know, it just kind of keeps them stuck here until they're able to release that and release into the drag that they're feeling, you know, instead of fighting it. Because again, too, we still have free will, you know, so even in that state, if we don't want to listen to that drag and we want to stay here because we're freaking out, you know, then we're going to stay here.
So when you help somebody who is stuck, or a being that is stuck in that in-between, generally speaking, is it about like helping them acknowledge that they are not in their physical vessel anymore?
Yes. And well, it's more, it kind of depends. Typically, if it's a child, they're looking for a parent. They're looking for somebody to comfort them. They're scared. They're alone. They don't know where they are. So it's just kind of reassuring them like, no, you're okay. I'm here for you. Like, I'm sending you love. Like, I've got you in a little hug. Just release. It's okay. Go back home. Go where you need to go. You know, you don't need to be here anymore. Just release. It's okay. It's like reassurance. If somebody has been murdered, or if somebody was a murderer, sometimes they have too much guilt, which kind of keeps them trapped here as well. They almost keep replaying the situation of if they were murdered, like they'll keep replaying the situation of their death because it's just so traumatic for them that they can't come to peace with it, essentially. So that kind of keeps them here. And for that, it's just kind of reassuring them like, it's okay, it's over, you're not in pain anymore, you're not hurting, you're not in danger, you're where you need to go. You know, it's usually just reassurance that like they're okay, things are safe, they do not need to live in that reality anymore, it's gone, it's time to go back home.
And for people who are still kind of like, whoa, and just listening in on this conversation, can you explain how that is not something to be fearful of, like why this is like essentially a new beginning, in the same way that when we experience rebirth and death, or death into rebirth in a day-to-day action, like how is that the new rebirth? Like
So again, going back to the concept of death being a break from the illusion, when we're in that state, we are still separating ourselves from our true nature. We are all one. We are our source, you know? So we are still creating like, I am this, they are them. Like there's this separation, essentially to be fueled with light and like allow your life force energy to flow and like experience some kind of life. You know, you need to release those negative things to be able to pass on. Again, it's just a break from the illusion. A lot of times when people do pass on the other side, sometimes they have like random duties where I almost feel like some people have their own lifetime like as a spirit, you know, which is really interesting. Like I've had some people like work with angelic realms, like trying to guide people. Some people will take it upon themselves to be guides for like family in this lifetime. You know, I feel like you still have duties. It's a whole, you're still going, you know, it's like you still have stuff going on. It's just not physical and it's just in a different way. But you're still there. Your soul doesn't go anywhere. It's matter. It's substance. You know, it's something in itself. Well, it's not matter, but it's something. When you pass on, when you're in that in-between state between like you just died and you're waiting to reincarnate into a new lifetime, you know, you are conversating with other people. My great grandmother could be talking to your great great aunt or something right now. You know, it's like you still have conversations, you still meet people, there's still like a life there. It's just different. You're more connected with source, and you're more in line with who you are, you know. I don't know what I'm saying. I feel like I'm rambling, but
no, you're making a lot of sense. At least to me, I feel like essentially what I'm understanding too is that when you leave your third dimensional physical body and you're entering a higher realm, because again, when you are a light source, you are naturally in this really high vibration, and you're going through.
No. So I just elbowed my cat. Elbowed him in the face.
So when you're entering this higher dimensional realm as a light being, you know, we have in the universe, we have so many realms, so many dimensions that we go through, and each of them, I love the close-up, each of them have this own kind of like purpose and community within them, and then they get higher and higher, and the higher you become in terms of your vibration, the closer you are to source, the center of the universe, right? And source is just pure unconditional love, and it's just light and love. So just to kind of tie it back to like the literal physical plane that we're in, and so people can relate to it a little bit more, while death is a very challenging topic because we still have ego, and we like the idea of comfort, right? What happens is the more that you do things from your heart, you see that things just flow better. You enjoy your community a lot more. You tend to recognize what it feels like to be authentically aligned. And when you're doing things that your heart desire, your light body desires, the things that you are conditioned to believe as true start to agitate you a lot more. Like it just doesn't serve you in the same way as doing your light work. So imagine that sensation, essentially, like once you've fulfilled this purpose and this reality in this lifetime, imagine being able to say, like, I've accomplished, but I'm moving on to something that is literal light work that I can help the matrix of what we in this lifetime are experiencing. So you are actually, for one example, helping in a greater capacity the earth move forward and along by ethereal control, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, again, that is life. Starting to become agitated and like remember, I don't know, what aligns with you is coming back to life. When we have frustrations, we are literally killing parts of ourselves. You know, we're separating ourselves, and that is death. When we come into this world feeling like we are separate individuals, that is death. As we start understanding and remembering that we are all one, that is coming back to life. So when we actually die, it is like the ultimate rebirth into this new lifetime, you know? And when we come into this world, that is death, you know? I was going to say something, but I forgot.
It'll be rebirthed into something.
I remember.
Go for it.
Also, because we are source and source is everything, I feel like that too, people get scared, like, oh, well, if I die, or if, I don't know, if my family member dies or something like that, you know, it's like, oh, that's it, they're gone forever. But it's like, no, their essence is still there. And again, they are part of source. They are part of everything. They are in everything. They are everything. You know, if you call upon them, like, they haven't gone anywhere. They're just in a different state of being. They may be invisible, but they have not gone anywhere. If you need them, they will be there, you know, in whatever form that may be.
Can you give some examples of what that might look like to some people, just so you know, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, give me a sign, I want to know that you're around, you know, in a time of discomfort. But not the way that we're used to communicating as humans.
Right.
And that's what people have to recognize and be more open-minded to receive. So
yeah, so I mean, it kind of depends. Typically, and this is like if somebody goes to see a medium and wants to talk to a family member that's passed on, it takes a lot of energy for our loved ones to be able to communicate sometimes, you know, to be able to, like, when you communicate to an energy being, you're raising your frequency, they're lowering theirs, and you're kind of meeting in the middle. Sometimes they're too high up there and it's just too difficult for them to come down, you know, so it may be difficult for them to communicate so clearly, which is fine. I feel like in that sense, they will usually utilize this like energetic connection you have with them, you know, so you might feel like, you might think about them and you'll feel like in your heart, it just feels good. You know, it's like that could be, it's very subtle, but that in itself is that recognition. And it's like that energy connection you guys have is being fueled and like tugged on. Because again, sometimes it's difficult to like be like, I'm here, you know, it takes a lot of energy to do that. A lot of times you can hear knocking. Sometimes there's knocking. You can hear your voice being called. I feel like a lot of times if like lights start flickering or something moves or like something crazy like that, obviously they know something's going on. So it can be something like that. When we go to sleep at night, our soul leaves our body and kind of explores, you know, so at that point, if they are able to, just because it does take a lot of effort, you may have a dream about them where you guys are having some kind of conversation, you know, that's because your soul is able to raise higher, you know, to kind of, I don't know, communicate in whatever way. But it just does take a lot of energy to do that. So usually when that happens, it's usually like one very profound like experience or like a couple. It's not something like happens all the time, you know, just because it's just hard. Sometimes it could even be like you see a butterfly. A friend of mine, his sign with his mom is like a leaf will just come hit him on the shoulder, but there are like no trees around, and that happens all the time. So it could be something really random like that. I feel like the bottom line, especially for signs, is if you think it's a sign, it's a sign. If you have the inkling, or if it comes into your mind that, oh, maybe that's a sign, then it's a sign. Always, 100% of the time. If it comes and there's that possibility, it is a sign. Absolutely. I think that's also something difficult for us to adopt, especially with our ego, because then we start questioning things and whatever, but it's literally that simple.
It's really interesting when you start just like letting go and letting flow, because people want to make things a lot more complicated than they really are. It's really, when you're doing something so led, it just like, it genuinely just flows through you. Mm-hmm. It's so easy that it's like, it's so complicated for people to wrap their heads around. Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like that even goes to with just like awakening any kind of abilities you have, you know, it's like so easy to see things or hear things. It's so easy that it's difficult, you know, because it's just the most subtle shift of like trusting, but we usually go like, we like overshoot it by a lot.
It's crazy. I mean, that's when I was working with a mentor of mine to try and tap into my intuition a bit more. I was like, this can't be right, because I was like, this just, whatever is calling to me, I just acknowledge, and I'm like, oh, that's literally what it is. It's really cool. It's really cool. And it shows up in different ways. I mean, we could talk about like the Claire channels, but that might be for another story. But like it just shows up in different ways, and more people are one Claire than the other, and it's about just leaning into those, and eventually those things start opening up because you become basically fluent in one, and it could happen all at once. However, we should definitely save that for another one. I'm taking a mental note. I'm like, always the good ideas come through. But in terms of death, moral of the story is, while it is really challenging because our ego wants comfort and needs comfort in the human experience, you know, and we want to experience things the same way, we have to also have this come to moment where we recognize that the things that are guaranteed in life, which we've talked about, are change and death, right? And that's those are the two things that are guaranteed in life. Guaranteed. So how do you become comfortable and more open-minded to the fact that there is more, and that's by experiencing and getting used to and accustomed to shifting what doesn't serve you in your life. And that's how you get to that soul-led life, which is just so high vibe and amazing. And then when you do it, it's like you don't want to surround yourself with people who aren't there or experience things that don't serve you in that way anymore. And that's the ascension process. I hope this helps people at least conceptually understand that the concept of death is actually what rebirth is.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like the fact that it's so widely accepted that when you pass, you know, you see the light, you feel this like overwhelming, like feelings of love and belonging and whatever, you know, just shows that it's not scary. It's not the end to anything. It's a breaking of illusions. You realize that you're more than this. You're more than this physical world. This like skin sack, you know, is holding you back and you don't need it anymore. That's all it is, but you don't go anywhere. You're still there. You still have your essence. You know, if you want to connect with your loved ones, you can. Hell, at that point, you can even connect with your loved ones from like 5 lifetimes ago or something like that. You know, it's like you literally transcend physicality. Like you're pure essence at that point. You know, it's yeah.
I was gonna say, are we technically the lowest vibration in terms of a living dimension? Because I imagine 2D is so flat. It's flat, right? Like, is there a life source in that flat dimension?
I think the difficult thing with like trying to answer that question is on Earth, because we are here and we go through rebirthing, where we like, as we go through our lifetime, different chakras start opening. When we are a baby, we aren't born with our full chakra system already ready to go and like, boom, you know, we slowly kind of come into each chakra as we age and go through life and different like developmental whatever, you know, it all kind of coincides. So because that's the case, we are constantly raising our vibration up, potentially. I mean, best case scenario, sometimes people kind of stay really heavy, but you know, a lot of people are very like, there's a lot going on here where there's like full spectrum of stuff happening. From my understanding, I feel like we probably would be one of the lowest. I don't necessarily know if we are the lowest, and like, you know, but we are definitely one of the lowest, just due to our nature. Again, our kind of way of living here is very unique in the sense that we kind of come and forget everything and just kind of allow ourselves to start remembering slowly. What's also interesting is each generation is able to hold on to a higher frequency. So as a collective, we are constantly raising our vibration up together. So then too, I feel like we're starting to develop a little bit. I honestly, it almost feels like we're like a third world country that's like starting to develop almost, you know, it's like, that's kind of, I feel like what it's almost synonymous to, you know? However, I don't know. Oh no, I wouldn't say that. I feel like the time that we do become fully developed or whatever, you know, it's going to be a totally different ball game. Like it's, you know,
I feel like what's happening, which I hope, I mean, people have like, they have one of two options at this point, you know, with these next 5 years in particular. You know, we are going to be raising our vibration. We don't have a choice as we enter and we get closer to the Earth center. So I'm very interested to see how the grid is going to shift. And I love that you called it out. Like every generation has this intention to continue to raise and help Gaia and her consciousness move in that direction. She needs to know that she's supported, and she is supported. But it's interesting that, you know, I'm very fascinated by what's going to happen as we enter 5D. Like, is there still going to be a third dimensional, like, I know time's not linear, but is there still going to be that third dimensional something
I
there?
definitely feel like there is. I almost feel like it's when like when planets form, and like I forgot what it's called. Is it differentiation? When like the heavy matter goes to the bottom, and then like, you know, I feel like it's almost going to be like that, where there's like this like heavy world, you know, that's almost separate from this like other worlds here, where I almost feel like that we're just going to be on two different wavelengths completely, and there's going to be very little, I don't know, I almost feel like it's like Earth is slowly like separating almost, and like two different states, you know? But then too, what we were talking about originally with the COVID video was some people can't handle that, and they're doing the work on the other side. So right now there has been a lot of death, you know, a lot of people passing over, and that's because they are here to kind of help that collective shift on through an energetic form, because they just can't do it physically for whatever reason, you know, it's just how their contract is. But yeah, it's very interesting, because I feel like especially as we move into 5D, there's this big relationship with our spirit friends. You know, it's like I don't know. Definitely, I'm very curious.
A lot of people have been like, I need a sign, I need to know that things are going to be okay. And that's the beauty of this. Like, things are going to be okay, but we have to be able to take care of ourselves first. And that really does come down to raising your vibration to match that ascension process, because you have free will to override whether or not you go into, because it's the Mandela effect that's essentially happening. We're splitting these like two dimensions to create these like two realities. One is the third dimension, one is the fifth dimension. Right now, as humans, we're going through both of them at the same time. So there's that freneticism that we're all feeling. So how do you navigate that? You have to, I was following, I think she's awesome too. I was following Elizabeth April, and she basically said, you know, you have to maintain 0 point neutrality. And that's something that I studied when I was studying health coaching in general. That is the point of being totally present in yourself and doing things soul led. But we're human, like we're gonna go like this. But how do you navigate going from like, I'm happy, like really happy, ecstatically happy, to like really sad? It's by understanding how to manage those expectations and learning how to bounce back to that, so you can move into the higher vibrational field with more ease than not. Because the more resistant you are, the more challenging it's going to be to navigate into this 5D, or it might not be of service to Earth's consciousness at that point.
And I feel like what's important too is that I feel like a big prominence in the spiritual community especially is that like everything is light and love, everything needs to be happy. If you're not happy, then you're not doing something right, you know? But it's like, no, we're literally here to learn lessons. And when something like, even if you are like at the highest vibrational state you will ever be, you're in your prime, you know, and you go through something again, you're experiencing a rebirth. You're kind of like, it's like getting a slingshot. You have to pull it back in order for it to release, and it's going to release way further than you pulled it back, you know? It's like you have to go through that in order to keep progressing, you know, in order to keep bringing life into yourself, in order to keep becoming rebirthed into this like beautiful person you are. And I think what's also beautiful is that we're here in this lifetime, and it is part of our soul contract to be a part of this like grand like collective consciousness shift. You know, it's really cool, and things are difficult, but again, we're here for a reason. We made the choice to be here, and we got to kick ass, man. We're doing
it. But what you were saying a little like in this conversation, or in this part of the conversation, and a little bit earlier, which I find so interesting, because it's something that I had read in another book called Your Body Keeps the Score. Have you read that book? Have you heard of it?
So actually, I may have heard of it.
Well, just in case, let me enlighten you a little bit. But you basically summed it up a little bit too, is that when you are resistant to what you are meant to do, and you go along with things that are no longer of service to you, or you avoid facing the heaviness, or whatever it is, whatever that looks like, that is like of resistance, right? Your body holds on to these emotions, and what happens is it manifests into something that is uncomfortable for your body. So it can create cellular damage. So the energetic resistance, the emotional resistance manifests into a physical ailment, and that is what diseases, dis-ease, discomfort. And that can, the more that you hold on to discomfort, the more that it can manifest into sickness, chronic sickness.
Absolutely. You're literally blocking your life force energy. You're literally blocking your flow of like nourishment energetically from coming in. You're literally like suffocating those parts of your body. Absolutely. And I think what's also important, any kind of discomfort is always a message. If you are in some kind of situation and you feel uncomfortable, there is a message there for you. It doesn't always mean something's bad, like you got to freak out and get ready for like, you know, it means there's an opportunity for growth there, and there's an opportunity for development. And I feel like in all cases, whether you hurt yourself, I have bad joints. Apparently I was born with like loose joints, so my like joints dislocate a lot, which is so fun.
Sounds
but I also am aware that I have an issue where I have like energy spurting out of my joints, you know, just due to my nature. And like, I don't know, it's just part of my nature that I've been trying to work on, you know, but it's like all of these things are messages to us. These are things that we need to, I forgot the word is.
Kind of acknowledge and release.
Things we need to acknowledge. Yeah, exactly. These are all lessons for us. I feel like our bodies are our best, like,
report card.
I can't talk right now.
It's Mad Libs. I'll fill in the sentence for you. I hope we're not dealing with any copyright issues by me saying that. It's Mad Libs though. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I don't want people to get fearful again of being like, now I'm not living my purpose. Now what the hell am I supposed to be doing? Like, no, it's feedback for you. So in those moments, my recommendation, if you choose to do this, again, everything is free will, is when you notice discomfort, notice where in your body it shows up. And then also like say what triggered these things, and then try and get the correlation. See if it's something that you currently have to acknowledge to move in the right direction, or is it something that you have to release from the past in order to make for that? I know, tell me about it. He's like, I get it, guys, I get it. Yeah, it's cool. But
and I feel like too, sometimes, you know, and like you said too, those things it's not always like, my arm hurts, what lesson is there? Like, is this life-changing thing, you know? Sometimes it's just the act of acknowledging is like all you're supposed to do. You know, it's so varied too. And I feel like
for a long time, I was definitely on that extreme. I was like, oh my God, my fingernail is chipping. What does this mean? What finger is this? What does this telling me?
But yeah, no, sometimes you're just supposed to acknowledge like, okay, something maybe is not right. Let me pay attention to if something causes uncomfortability, or I don't know. I feel like with a lot of this stuff, you know, everybody kind of goes through their own thing, and everybody has a different way of being in a different story and stuff like that. So it's almost like take what resonates with you and then go for it. Take everything with a grain of salt. You don't have to be, you know, you have to soak it in like, oh, damn. If I don't know why my arm's broken, I've failed. You know, it's okay. There are lessons there, and that's all part of the journey too, you know?
Well, thank you. I think this was awesome. I feel like this was so informative. Again, I think the intention that we had, we always try and go in with a little bit of an intention as we are recording these things. And the intention when we set this last month was to really try and make people aware of what it does mean to physically pass and what that looks like on a daily basis. So there's less of this heaviness involved in this concept, because westernized culture tends to neglect a lot that the easternized culture acknowledges about the soul evolution. So I think it's a really beautiful thing. I anticipate that anybody who listens to this is going to feel this slight sense of release at a minimum.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like this was awesome, and I thank everybody for listening. Again, if anybody wants to go check out Readings with Amber, she will post her information, and I will make sure to tag her below. And yeah, if you guys are looking to help release any physical gook and all that to help figure out your soul purpose, now that you're like, oh my God, I gotta live a soul-led life, hit me up. We can all work together and make this one beautiful, right? We can make this one beautiful, raised unity consciousness. So thank you guys so much. And